Andrea Jenkins has been on an improbable odyssey. She is the erstwhile Conservative MP in a bright yellow dress, notable not for policy brilliance, but for giving a middle finger at a general to the general public when she had been appointed as a member of the cabinet in the fading days of Boris Johnson's tenure. A gesture that, in fairness, may be the most coherent message of her political career. Jenkins, now donning the Reform UK mantle, has embarked upon a new crusade to become the first mayor of Greater Lincolnshire. Yes, this is the same Jenkins who once railed against devolution, now seeking to helm a devolved authority. Jenkins, resplendent in a heavy-duty industrial PPE, recently took to Scunthorpe's British steel mills to lament the state of industry, echoing the melancholic strains of so many would-be working-class champions. And what is her grand vision? Labour voters are coming over to reform, she declares, claiming reform is a bit like Thatcher did. She pulled in both directions. Quite a statement, given Thatcher famously pulled in exactly one direction, towards self-improvement, other people might say towards mass employment, towards deindustrialisation. It is, of course, thrilling to hear Jenkins invoke Thatcher's name, as if the people of Scunthorpe might have forgotten that their industrial decline began precisely under Thatcher's leadership, and wonders if she will next visit Orgrove and promise the miners a new dawn, just as Thatcher had. Jenkins' speech, as ever, had all the rhetorical subtlety of a foghorn. Just as the Romans marched this land below our feet, she begins, an odd choice of comparison, given the Romans were colonizers who exploited local resources rather than a certain conservative government that she once supported. But the past is the past, and she instead reminds us of a more recent historical march. Nigel, Richard Tice and I, along with the wonderful Kate Hoey, together we walked these roads to march for Brexit some 6 years ago. Ah, yes, Brexit, that never-ending pilgrimage of grace. Jenkins tells us that she was buoyed up as they marched against Theresa May's capitulation to the EU. But now, 6 months of a Labour government has apparently done more damage than most of us could imagine possible. Which raises the question, is there a political alignment on earth that Jenkins wouldn't find apocalyptic? Naturally, no Reform UK speech would be complete without an all-out assault on net zero and the creeping menace of solar panels, and Jenkins warns us that Labour will desecrate our countryside with solar farms, because, of course, nothing ruins a good pastoral scene like environmentally friendly energy production. Worse still, she decries the idea of a nuclear waste dump in Lincolnshire, which is admittedly concerning, though less so when one considers the figurative toxic waste currently emanating from Reform UK campaign headquarters. The net zero has become a religion, she warns. This from a party whose entire platform is built on the veneration of one individual, Farage, Saint Farage, and the unquestioning dogma of Brexit. A religion? The political equivalent of a medieval crusade where the promised land is a Britain that somehow existed before the 1970s but after the Blitz. Jenkins assures us that she's finally found her true home. Reform UK, I'm sure you agree, is not just a political party, it's a lifeboat for this nation. Is it going out into the Channel? It's a curious metaphor, given that Reform UK is captained by Nigel Farage, a man who spent years demanding tighter immigration controls and then jumped ship to America the moment the political tide turned. If Reform is a lifeboat, one suspects it must be made of papier-mâché, its compass spinning wildly in search of an actual policy, an actual direction. Where is it going? Where is this lifeboat? Who is this lifeboat for? No Reform rally would be complete without a diatribe against immigration, of course, and Jenkins doesn't disappoint. She laments Boston's transformation, claiming it has changed beyond recognition due to migration. Well, that's barely worthy of a UKIP leaflet. I mean, I was in Boston not so long ago. I could identify the stump. Local grievances, she insists, stem from houses of multiple occupancy, and even claims migrants drop bags of excrement through carrier bags. Too many bags there, I think, because they lack bathrooms. too many carrier bags, and surely the whole point about the bathrooms is that they should be available in the 5-star accommodation that they've been granted by the Home Office. The measured, evidence-based rhetoric that we've come to expect. What Jenkins fails to mention is that many of those migrants are the backbone of Lincolnshire's agricultural workforce, quite literally feeding the nation. And why let economic reality intrude when there are so many cultural bogeymen to invoke? Jenkins' grand vision involves turbocharging skills, a phrase that is now legally required in all populist manifestos, and rooting out woke waste, another mandatory phrase, definition pending. I mean, is that something to do with the stuff in the carrier bags? She vows to set up the Doge Lincolnshire. I don't understand what she means by that. A baffling reference to Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, or is it possibly a sort of harking back to the time when Lincolnshire and areas around Spalding were covered in marshes, rather like an early version of the Venetian canals? That's right. The Party of British Sovereignty is now taking governance tips from the South African tech billionaire who wants to implant chips in people's brains? Or is it taking some sort of some sort of advice from 15th century Venice, from the Serenissima? She promises a transport for Lincolnshire. Is that going to be a gondola? She fails to mention how she will fund this transport. Perhaps the money will come from cancelling diversity officers, which, as we all know, is the key driver of municipal bankruptcy. Jenkins rounds off her speech, a fascinating speech to listen to, by the way, with a rallying cry to put Lincolnshire first. I was brought up in Lincolnshire, by the way. One cannot help but notice that her vision of Lincolnshire, her vision for Lincolnshire, suspicious of migrants, wary of international cooperation, reflexively hostile to progress, seems indistinguishable from Reform UK's broader brand of nostalgia politics. In the Lincolnshire that I knew as a child, my local parish priest was from Belgium. Most of our friends were from the Netherlands. It was a multicultural society before that even became a tradition. And much of that was to support the bulb industry, which was destroyed by George Eustace and the back end of the European Union membership, and then was completely gutted by Brexit. And why was it destroyed? Because laws came in to stop the seasonal workers from Eastern Europe. And it was the seasonal workers from Eastern Europe who picked all the bulbs and who took the heads off the tulips. And without them, that business collapsed overnight. And the wonderful Spalding Flower Parade disappeared overnight, literally overnight. George Eustace did his job, and the Flower Parade collapsed. And that's not putting Lincolnshire first. Will Lincolnshire vote for Jenkins? Perhaps. After all, stranger things have happened, and like Andrea Jenkins becoming an MP in the first place. But one thing is certain: whether she wins or loses, she will remain what she's always been, a politician made famous for her middle finger, rather more than for her ideas.